Now with a look at the day's headlines, it's the ITV News at 10.
From northeast to southwest, more ambulance strikes announced for the new year. As a wave of industrial action kicks in for the festive period, a health union orders 2 additional days of action, with warnings of more to come if the government doesn't promise a pay rise.
Commit now to hold proper pay talks about boosting pay this year.
Price rises on the rails. It's below inflation, but announced just as services are once again severely disrupted. The Scottish Parliament approves a new law to make it easier to change gender, but the UK government threatens to block it over concerns about women's safety. And will it be a dry Christmas? Never mind the alcohol, the water has run out for many and it might take days to fix.
This is ITV News with Chris Shipp.
Hello, good evening. If the end of 2022 feels like it's buckling under the weight of industrial action across the NHS and large parts of the transport network, then as it stands tonight, 2023 is not looking much brighter. 2 more days of ambulance strikes have been announced across much of England for the new year, and nurses are warning they too plan to walk out again. The government, though, continues to refuse to talk pay, as Libby Vina reports.
An emergency service meant to help people at times of crisis, now facing a crisis of its own. After yesterday's action, the first in over 30 years, more strikes are looming. The Health Secretary is refusing to talk about pay. Union officials say it's the only way to break the deadlock.
What we're asking for to do is commit now to hold proper pay talks about boosting pay this year so that we can start reversing some of the enormous pressures that have built up through having so many unfilled vacancies, through having so many staff who are leaving.
Action will involve ambulance staff in London, Yorkshire, the North West and North East, as well as the South West of England on the 11th and 23rd of January. For that, paramedics and call handlers from the GMB union will take action across England and Wales next Wednesday, while the Royal College of Nursing is tomorrow expected to announce further strikes for January. Tonight, the Health Secretary said it was disappointing some union members were taking further action. Earlier, he hinted a better deal might be possible next year, but union leaders say the dispute is over this year's pay offer, and NHS managers seem to agree.
This industrial action, as we understand it, is about this year's pay offer. It's not about negotiating for the future. And I think that what we've got to see is the government coming round the table to talk about pay.
But ministers say it's not their job to negotiate directly.
You cannot have an independent pay review process which takes the politics out of pay and then have politicians intervening in that process. Not only does it blow the process up and destroy the process, but it also means what happens in future years.
Can that position hold? Ministers seem to think so. There were some more conciliatory words from the Health Secretary today when he tweeted that he was grateful for the work of ambulance staff, but it doesn't look like that gratitude is going to translate into a better, and these now do look inevitable. Add to that the fact that the Royal College of Nursing tomorrow will announce there'll be more strikes by its members, and it looks like that the new year will see more disruption right across the health service.
OK, Libby in Westminster, thank you. To another long-running dispute now, and after weeks of disruption on the railways, much of it caused by strikes, the government today announced that train fares in England would rise by almost 6%. Ministers insisted they capped it as it was scheduled to be a 12% rise, but for anyone commuting or training home for Christmas, that was cold comfort. Here's Ben Chapman.
As passengers sought to squeeze in some pre-Christmas travel on a day without a rail strike.
Have you asked for anything nice?
Staff at Birmingham New Street were trying to bring some festive cheer. But the news of unwanted price rises has left a sour taste in the mouths of travellers who've had to put up with all the disruption.
Just sticking the knife in, I think, because people are struggling with the cost of living, and that's the whole reason for the strikes to begin with.
I think it's ridiculous, to be honest.
I think it should remain the same until when things are picking up.
I'm like an avid public transport user. I commute from Birmingham to Manchester, and it's just like I'm considering getting a car because of how expensive and unreliable everything is.
The increase of up to 5.9% will happen at the beginning of March. It'll affect regulated fares, including season tickets, some off-peak return journeys and anytime fares. It means a season ticket between Liverpool and Manchester will hit nearly £2,600, while commuters between Birmingham and London will now pay almost £6,500. It may have angered many travellers after months of disruption and strike action, but the government is claiming credit for capping the price rises well below the level of inflation, describing it as a fair balance between the needs of taxpayers and passengers. But it is still the second highest increase on record, and both passenger watchdog and Labour say it's poor value for money.
That is more than many people's wages have been rising. And is what they needed at this point in time was a government trying their level best to insulate them from such brutal fare hikes.
There are fears that train companies could increase unregulated fares by even more. And with more strikes planned in the new year, rail travel is unlikely to get more reliable as it gets more expensive. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Birmingham.
Right, healthcare trains are now to our borders. Passengers hoping to travel by plane from tomorrow are being warned they face long delays as Border Force staff walk out. Some airports are not ruling out having to close altogether. One of the 6 airports affected is Gatwick, where Martin Stew is tonight. Martin, what can passengers expect tomorrow?
Well, the good news, Chris, is that most flights are expected to go ahead, but passengers are being told long delays are probably inevitable. And as you mentioned, the head of the Border Force refusing to rule out the fact that some airports may have to close for a while at least altogether. The strike itself is over pay and pensions. Around 1,000 Border Force staff will walk out at 6 airports: Heathrow, Gatwick, Birmingham, Manchester, Cardiff and Glasgow. Disruptions also expected at the port of Newhaven in East Sussex. And the action begins tomorrow with strikes on every day until the new year, apart from the 27th. Now, most of the disruption is expected on flights coming into the UK rather than flying out. And over the 8 strike days, that's about 10,000 flights and up to 2 million passengers. The Home Office say they've drafted in soldiers, they've drafted in civil servants as well to try and ease things, but inevitably people have, and so there will be delays. In the meantime, passengers are being told, if they can, to use those electronic e-passport gates to go through, which require less people to physically man them. The only downside is children under 12 can't use those. So if you're travelling with a young family over Christmas, the advice would be pack lots of snacks and lots of activities.
Good advice, Martin. Thank you very much. And if you head over to ITV's new streaming service, ITVX, and scroll down to the news section, you'll find a full guide on all the strikes affecting our railways, roads and airports over the Christmas period. Now, applause rang out around the Scottish Parliament chamber today as a new law was approved that will make it easier to change gender, removing the need for a medical diagnosis. But there were also jeers which sum up just how divisive this legislation has been, and the UK government has already said it may attempt to block the new law. Our Scotland correspondent Peter Smith reports.
You're a man and I'm a woman. That's your opinion.
Gender reform has been one of the most constant of the revolution, dividing people and parties.
It seems to be the First Minister has not taken the people of Scotland with her on these issues. Polling shows that a majority of Scots parts of this bill.
It's even pitted J.K. Rowling against Nicola Sturgeon, the Harry Potter author, previously calling the First Minister a destroyer of women's rights.
I'm a feminist. I will argue for women's rights. I will do everything I can to protect women's rights for as long as I live. But I also think it's an important part of my responsibility to make life a little bit easier for stigmatised minorities in our country.
After debate and delay, finally today the Scottish Parliament voted.
Yes, 86, no 39. There were no abstentions. The motion is therefore agreed and the Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
That vote brought cheers and jeers from those in the gallery.
The next.
And this is what changes. The age at which someone can legally change their gender will go from 18 to 16 in Scotland. The time required for people to permanently live in their gender before making the legal change will drop from 2 years to 3 months. 6 months if you're 16 or 17 years old. Also, you will no longer need a psychiatric diagnosis in order to apply for the certificate. Trans activist Heather has been pushing for this change for 6 years.
It's a fabulous day. It's a wonderful day.
What do you say to those women who are concerned that this will allow predatory men easier access to their spaces like changing rooms?
I use female toilets. This change in the way you apply for a gender recognition certificate doesn't affect that in the slightest, because the legislation currently allows for those single-sex spaces to exclude trans people if there is a good reason to do so.
Scotland is still divided, but the UK government has indicated tonight there could still be a legal challenge to block this from ever becoming law. The controversy is not over yet. Peter Smith, News at 10.
The South London music venue where 2 people died following a crowd surge has had its licence temporarily suspended. Security guard Gabby Hutchinson and Rebecca Ikumelo were killed following the crush at the O2 Academy in Brixton last Thursday. And a powerful Arctic storm has hit North America, causing widespread disruption. Forecasters predict temperatures could plunge to minus 45 Celsius this weekend. Now, thousands of people in southern England where taps have run dry have been told their water may not be restored before Christmas. Southern Water says the new leaks have been caused by the recent freezing weather. But as Ellie Pitt has been hearing, patience is running thin.
With no water to their houses, the families in these cars are queuing to collect supplies of it in bulk. Showering, washing up, even flushing the toilet is no longer possible at home.
It's terrible. We can't use the toilet. We need to go in town just to use the toilet. We went to a shopping mall just now to get some water. Even that water there is completely empty.
I can't believe, another Christmas and another disaster. If it's not COVID, it's no water.
Very difficult. Yeah, I have a husband who's not well. My mom's 94, so it's made life very difficult for us.
Water companies are having to provide for thousands of customers cut off after pipes in the network burst, having been damaged by the recent freezing temperatures.
Families are coming to stay with people. We recognise this is a really important time for people to be at home and enjoying the build-up to Christmas. So we're hugely sorry. This is absolutely not at all what anyone at Southern Water wanted to happen.
There are apologies too from South East Water, whose customers in parts of Kent have been without water for nearly a week. Marianne's neighbours wait their turn for a portaloo she had to hire for her mum's wake on Monday.
It was horrible. We've been to celebrate her life and it was a wonderful, wonderful service. And then we walked down the drive and I'm saying, really sorry, but you need to go in there if you need the toilet and you can't wash your hands, you've got to sanitise.
Southern Water have said they're working towards but can't guarantee that it'll be fixed by Christmas Eve at the latest. As the 25th inches closer, families in this part of the country are wondering how the outage will affect their plans. Ellie Pitt, ITV News, Eastleigh.
Finally from me, a word we wouldn't normally use anywhere in the bulletin, but we will, following a charity auction in New Zealand. The money was raised after Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern called an opposition politician, and these are her words, not mine, an arrogant prick. Her insult was just about caught on microphones in Parliament last week, but the two political leaders signed the official record of the debate and auctioned it off for £50,000 for a prostate cancer charity. And we had to write that one very carefully. That's it. The national weather is next, but from everyone on the team here, enjoy the run up to Christmas. Bye-bye.